at that level, like what is the lifestyle when you're in the C-suite of a Fortune 500 company? Because kind of from where I'm from, that just kind of seems a little untouchable. Like what is the expectation? What was your lifestyle like? Are you working a ton? Obviously, there's tons of professional pressure to perform, right? You have the earnings call coming up. You get, everyone's got to look good. So I guess walk us through what that, I guess, decade plus looked like as far as just the professional pressure and expectations and how you navigated that.
Yeah, well, Lendlease and Dell were different than Lowe's because both of them are very global companies. In fact, at both of those companies, I would say 75% of my staff was not based in the U.S., so they required a tremendous amount of travel. Lowe's is 90% U.S. based outside of the factories that they have in China. And when I was there, we opened stores in Canada and Mexico, but those were, really a distraction compared to the 1,800 plus stores and the distribution centers. So Lowe's, being a retail environment, you worked the hours that you worked in retail. So my two bosses were the CIO and the chief operating officer, who happened to be brothers. They both liked to get in the office between 5:30 and 6 a.m. in the morning. And the chief operating officer sometimes wouldn't leave till commonly 7:30 at night. So you start following a pattern that they're working. So lots of 11, 12-hour days. Plus, for a long period of time, I was running operations for them. So anytime we had any issue, regardless of the weekend or night, I was on phone calls or video conferences dealing with hurricanes, outages, those types of things. So probably working 60 to 80-hour weeks typically. And then Dell was even more intensive than that because I was traveling 2 weeks out of the month out of the country. And so on not only on a different time zone, but you're working the time zone you're in, but then you're also working the other time zones because I had staff in South America, North America, Europe, Asia, etc. So then I would get back from those trips, and for the next 2 weeks, you'd be playing catch up back in Round Rock and then working the other shifts. So I was easily working 80 to 100-hour weeks. And what I really learned throughout all that experience, looking back, is that I was doing a fantastic job of making money for companies and the board and et cetera, but I really wasn't focused on making my own dreams a reality. And what I was facing pays a huge toll after a while because it starts impacting your relationships, it starts impacting your physical and mental health, and obviously your emotional health. So I can see why so many people who are in those environments and end up getting burned out.
John, do you think now with 9 years of kind of a different trajectory to your life, if you were to take all your learnings and kind of the awareness, both self-awareness and then just macro awareness that you have now, and put yourself back into the seat at Lowe's or at Dell, how would your leadership style change? And also, do you think you could even last a month or 2 months there with kind of the new awareness you have?
Well, I would definitely do it differently. And I think I would have worked a lot smarter than I was doing. I think what ended up happening to me is I got consumed by the calendar. Meaning the biggest thing that I found in those big environments is you are just, as a senior executive, you're consumed by meetings. And it was very difficult to break out of those meetings because at Dell, for instance, I was sitting on the staff of the 5 presidents. So not only was I having to attend their staff meetings, but I had to meet with then their direct reports and the CFO and, of course, Michael and the executive steering committees and the board meetings. So I would have found a different way that I would have put much more strict boundaries in place protecting my time and would have only taken the most absolutely critical meetings, because anything that you weren't getting done has to get done outside of work. And that was causing a significant drain. So that would be one side of it. But I'd say another huge side of it is I just found with a lot of those companies, and I think a lot of companies now, everything is driven by shareholder value. So what that amounts to is you're either looking at top line growth or bottom line cuts. And so oftentimes what that amounts to is the most critical entity in any of these companies is the people that are driving the companies and the most creative assets that you have. Yet I think so many companies today treat those very people as commodities. And so I would have always said that my leadership style was a servant leader, because that's what I had learned in the military. But I don't think that's the leadership style that's needed in the military anymore. And I don't think it's the type of leadership style that's needed in corporations anymore. And I advocate for something that I call the gardener leader now, because I think just as a gardener gardens their crops, meaning they have to be eyes on in planting the crops, making sure that they're cultivating them. But there's an inherent portion of this where you also need to be hands off, and you need to trust your people, trust the plants, the conditions that they're going to cultivate and grow. And the way I liken this to is if you have a software developer and you're micromanaging everything that they're doing, their output is going to be 100% conditioned by the input that you're giving them, as opposed to giving them a goal that they need to hit with some motivation and constant reinforcement, but allowing them to be creative and to come to their own design conclusions on how to best approach the problem they need to solve. That's, to me, what a gardener does, and why it's different than more of the servant leadership style that I think many people have become accustomed to.